I'm here with Catherine Wedd, who's the Tuk candidate for National Party. Kia ora, Catherine, and welcome to the show. Yeah.
Kia ora, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
Now, Catherine, you've been the nominated candidate for National for a little while now, but obviously the Cyclone changed everything. How do you move from it's a difficult situation as a candidate because you want to help people, but you also want to campaign. How do you move between the two kind of thing?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I was selected as the candidate 12 weeks ago, and we came out of the blocks pretty fast, getting out there and just getting in front of as many people as we could straight away, just to let them know that there was a National Party candidate here in Tuki. But then, of course, the cyclone happened, and that was literally a couple of weeks later, and so that changed everything. I come from the horticulture sector. I was working at Bostock, New Zealand at the time, so I got out really, really fast the second day, and I saw the impact firsthand, and I could see, the devastation and understand the huge impact that the cyclone had on our region. So from there, basically, it was just about getting out and understanding and meeting as many people as I could and listening and making sure that we understand what's happened to families, to orchardists, to farmers across the region so that we can advocate when the time's right.
So this has been an election campaign for you, or how do you get the balance right? Because some people might accuse you of just simply electioneering rather than while people are sort of in strife and that. How do you get that balance right?
That's a really good question. First and foremost, I think it's just about getting out there and connecting with as many people as you can and understanding what's happening on the ground. And as I said, I'm in the horticulture sector, so very early on I was talking to growers, I was understanding the impact on their orchards, on their crops, and could see very early on that it was huge. And so on the third day, I organised a bit of a stand-up for the growers, which I think you were at, and invited all of the media along. And a lot of authorities, the mayor came along as well, because communication was really, really hard at that time. But it was really, really important for the growers in our horticulture sector to send a really powerful message out there that, this was big and, we needed some support, so a lot of support for our region. And, you need to show that early on. And so I organised that and, just tried to work with as many people and help where I could. I was out with the Rural Support Trust helping get supplies out to rural communities. I was, went along to all the public meetings to understand exactly what was going on. I was just trying to connect with as many people as I could so that I can understand exactly what's going on, because this rebuild and recovery is going to take a long time, and it's important that we're at the forefront.
Because that is also a tricky situation. You were in the beginning, your narrative was that it's bad for growers, apple growers and things like that. But not all apple growers were affected, and obviously there's the fine balance between not scaring off international markets and that, saying that it's all doom and gloom. Do you think you got that right? Because, obviously there were some devastated people, there were some that weren't affected.
No, that's a really good question, but at the end of the day, we had 50% of our orchards here in Hawke's Bay impacted in some way, shape or form. And for some, it was entire orchards, for others, it wasn't so much. But at the same time, we've got a lot of crop that is beautiful export quality crop that we are exporting to the world, and we also wanted to send that powerful message out to the customers as well. And so we actually, a lot of growers got their customers here in a few weeks after the cyclone to show them that there were actually crops that weren't affected. But the crops that were affected, it's huge. It's millions and millions of dollars. And the latest figures that have come out is showing $1.5 billion to the industry, to the horticulture industry. That's huge. And so, that needs some support, and we need support from the government for this region. Yeah.
Now, obviously, you're not the MP, you would say yet, but you're not the MP now. What can you actually do to help people in your role? Can you do any more than say, I can?
Oh, I think that I'm able to listen and advocate when the time's right, but it's really important at the start that, you're not making it about the politics and you're not politicising things, and we were really, really careful not to do that. But now it's all about the politics. People want direction, they want decisions, they want to know. So, you know, we need to be able to stand up for them. So we need to understand exactly what's going on. But also I've got really good connections within the National Party. We've had our leader of the National Party, Christopher Luxon, here 3 times now in the last 10 weeks. We've had our deputy leader here. We've had many MPs come through, our agriculture spokesperson, our mental health spokesperson, Jerry Brownlee, who's in charge of the emergency management for the National Party. And so, you know, they were all able to understand, and then now they can advocate in Parliament as well. And so that's really important. So yes, I think that getting out there, being present, listening, understanding, and then being able to advocate when the time's right is really important. But also understanding what's happening on the ground with our local authorities as well, and working closely with the mayors of our region. So I've met with all of the mayors, Sandra, Alex and Kirsten, and just making sure that, you know, those councils are being supported as well, and the regional council as well. So, you know, I think it's a collaborative team effort, and it's important that we're out there understanding and advocating.
Now, what do you think about the money that has been offered to growers and that by government and do you think it will be enough, and should there be some sort of private sort of equity or funding that helps these growers?
Well, I think at the start it was really important to get money out the door, and that happened quickly with the farmers. There was $10,000 given, and then for the growers there was $2,000 a hectare up to $40,000. That was great, and that was really welcomed. But then there's been radio silence ever since, and there's been no indication of extra funding, extra support and any direction, and that's where there's now a lot of frustration, and I've said $1.5 billion to the horticulture sector, and the industry has got together and put together a proposal which was presented to the government I think 65 days ago, so quite a long time ago, and yet there's been no action, and they've seen no direction. And just yesterday we saw the Prime Minister come out and say that there's between $9 to $14 billion worth of damage here in the region. They've got a budget announcement in a few weeks, and surely they know how much they've got in the tank there to be able to give to our region to support it getting back on its feet. So just some direction or just some indication would be really good, because there's just so many people sitting in limbo at the moment. And it's so important for a lot of these businesses. They need certainty and security, and they need to know, can they replant the trees? You know, should they be replanting the crops? You know, there's the seasonal cycles. There needs to be some indication, and it's just taking too long.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned Christopher Luxon, the National Party leader. He was down here and he was selling the party's farming policy, and he said that by cutting red tape, farmers would be able to get back to farming. And as you know, I mean, a lot of farmers and growers aren't farming or growing because they're dealing with the devastation of the cyclone. What else is your party doing? I mean, it's all very well to say get back to farming, but how are you actually helping them do that?
Well, and this is what this announcement was about last week. It was our agriculture policy, where we introduced 19 new policies there. And as you say, a lot of that was about, you know, getting rid of the red tape, because at the moment it's really hard for farmers to farm, for growers to grow, and for our primary industries to get ahead, because they've just got so much red tape, so much compliance, major labour shortages, and you know, they can't get the wheels going in the business, and we can't be growing our region, and we can't be providing jobs and opportunities for everyone. So, you know, we are going to make sure that we're going to make it easier to farm, easier to grow, and easier to do business, and that's what we need. I mean, just the other day I was out with a farmer and he said, oh, I now need to get a consent to put a culvert in on the farm. I mean, that's just extreme, you know, and it just, with all of that compliance, it's just creating bottlenecks, and it's just making it very difficult.
But my point is that the wheels aren't turning anyway because of the cyclone. So what is your party doing to get people in a position where they can take advantage of your policies, if they do come in, of cutting the red tape? I mean, now they're not even farming, some of them. I mean, some of those people at that meeting that you were at, I spoke to, and they said their farms are destroyed, you know?
Yeah, and their farms are destroyed. There's a huge amount of erosion. There's, kilometres of fencing down. There's tracking that's been wiped out. Some people lost stock. It's been really, really difficult for farmers and really, really appreciate that. But one thing about the rural communities is that they rallied together, they united, they get on with the job, and that's what farmers do. And we need to allow them to be able to do that. And yes, the government gave $10,000 at the start, but we need to see now more support, and what we can do currently right now is put some pressure on and ensure that we're advocating for those rural communities, for those farmers, and make sure that they get the support they need, because also there's issues around mental health as well. And we had Matt Ducey, our MP and spokesperson for mental health, down not so long ago, and it's really important that we are out there supporting those rural communities in that sense too.
Yeah. Now, what are some of the other issues that you are campaigning on?
There's many issues that I'll be campaigning on,
Just your
Andrew.
list of highlights,
Yeah,
please.
yeah. No, but in particular, I'm really passionate about education.
Yeah.
I've got 4 children, and they're going through the education system at the moment. And, we're seeing huge failures when we see 98% of high school students in decile 1 and 2 schools failing basic reading, writing and maths tests. When we're seeing year 8 students, 45% of them failing reading and writing tests. I've got a year 8 daughter. She has dyslexia. She wasn't picked up with her dyslexia until she was year 6, till she was 11 years old. And I believe that's because there wasn't regular assessments going on to pick that up. We're not picking up that underperformance at the moment, so we need more regular assessment. And we introduced our education policy for primary and intermediate not so long ago, and we're saying we're going to get back to the basics. We're going to make sure that we've got an hour of reading, writing and maths in classes every day, which you think is quite simple, but as a parent, I'm witnessing firsthand that that's not happening, and I believe that that needs to happen. We need to get back to basics. We need to see more assessment. I sit on the board of trustees at Havelock North Primary, and one of the key focuses that came back in the surveys that we've been doing is around parents not being happy about reporting and assessing the children. And I think that that's really, really important, that we are reporting back so that we can pick up that underperformance, particularly in a lot of the lower decile schools, because these are the most vulnerable children, and we need to make sure that we're getting that right. So education is an area that I'm really passionate about.
Yeah. And obviously your party is big on crime as well, in terms of doing something about it. And recently a lot was made of the crime and police data being released, which showed that crime did go up in the week after the cyclone and then return back to normal. What do you say about those figures and the perception out there that crime has got worse?
Oh, I think it's not a perception. Crime has definitely got worse. We're seeing ram raids every 10 hours. I'm hearing from businesses all the time. Just the other day, a business called and they'd had $20,000 as someone had broken into their business. So retail crime is huge, it's up. And we've got gang crime, the increase in gangs is huge. They're up over 50% now.
So what is that crime that gangs are committing?
The youth offending is, is huge, particularly, in our area. And we need to create safer communities so that our children and grandchildren can grow up in safer communities. I mean, me as a mother of 4 children, I am really, really concerned. And, just before Christmas, my daughter got tracked on a motorbike when she was going to her after-school sport. And that's every mother's worst nightmare, when you're getting a call from police and your daughter's hiding because she's fearing for her life, you know. And I just think that we need to crack down on crime, and it's just not good enough. We need to provide the police with the tools that they need to ensure that we've got safer communities, and it's not happening now, and we need to make sure that we do that. We need to tackle the gang problem. The gangs, it's huge at the moment. I'm getting calls all the time, and people are really, really concerned about the gangs just wandering around, intimidating. Having gang patches in public is one of those main concerns. And under a national government, we would make sure that we get rid of those gang patches in public.
Or ban them.
Ban them.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a bit difficult, don't you think that that'll be quite difficult to do though?
Well, you can try, and we will make sure that that is the law. And at the end of the day, if you're not abiding by the law, there'll be consequences, and that's what we'll do.
Is crime still an issue in the devastated areas? Because you know that a lot of these public meetings, there was quite a bit of anger and that about it. Are you finding that there still are things happening?
Oh, there was huge anger at the time, and there was so much looting and crime happening with vulnerable people who had already lost everything, and yet you had these people, these coming out and looting. You know, it was horrible. They were taking tools out of the sheds, they were smashing windows in cars to see what they could get. It was real. And, you know, people were really, really scared. And I think that the government, they ignored it. They didn't acknowledge that this was actually happening on the ground, but it was really, really real for a lot of these people. And, you know, I was at a meeting not so long ago in Pakawai, and they were telling lots of stories of looting and, you know, just really, really horrible stuff when these guys have been totally devastated. They've lost everything, and they've got people coming into their homes and taking what they can. And you've got a government not recognising it and saying, well, no, you don't need more police presence there because that's not happening. Well, it was happening. It was real, and we need to recognise it and get real.
But there also have been some conspiracy theories and some stories that just aren't true. I've personally followed up on a couple that have been that didn't happen. How, as a candidate, do you sort through that, the sort of truth and the urban myths, really?
Well, I think you're always going to have urban myths, and there's always going to be some that will be taking advantage. But the vast majority of people in the likes of Eskdale, Puketapu, Pakawai, and all of those areas, they were really, really scared about the crime. And that was real, and that was not a myth. And so if you go along to the meetings and you listen and you understand, that was a very, very powerful message. And I do not think that they were making that up. And for the government to, you know, make those claims that it wasn't real was wrong.
Yeah. Now, you and your counterpart in Napier, Katie Nimmin, called for the government inquiry into Slash to be widened from Tairāwhiti to include Hawke's Bay. However, the Regional Council released a report which showed that while there was a lot of pine that washed down the rivers, it wasn't Slash. Have you changed your opinion on whether that was still needed to widen that inquiry?
No, I think that at the end of the day, there should have been a ministerial inquiry, and there still should be, into the woody debris and land use management in Hawke's Bay. I mean, no one can argue after seeing all of the woody debris swept up across the beaches, across the orchards, across our land, everywhere. Tūtera, Eskdale, Puketapu, the whole area, it was absolutely devastated. And I still believe that the people of Hawke's Bay need answers. And yes, there was a regional council report done, and I see that, but still if you look into that report, and there's also another independent report that's been done by the forestry industry itself. So there's a mesh of different reports, and these people have gone out, and you know, we don't know how much of the woody debris they've actually counted or what they've done to actually determine and come to those conclusions. But what it has shown is that there was still 50% of pines in that woody debris. And so if you look at that in terms of the pine, well then you've got to go back and look and say, well, where did that come from? Why did it come down the way it was? Was that the best use for that land? Because at the end of the day, it comes back to land use and what we're doing with our land. And I think it's really, really important that there's better outcomes and better accountability. And we would have got that if the ministerial inquiry had included Hawke's Bay. So for our local MPs who should be representing Hawke's Bay, they should have made an absolute focus on Hawke's Bay, and that didn't happen. Yeah. And so what we've got now is a mishmash of different reports coming out that we don't know whether they're independent or not independent or what they are. And so that's not giving the answers that people deserve.
Now, the issue of red zoning is top of mind for a lot of communities, and the government Grant Robertson was here in, I think, March, saying that there would be something done by beginning of April. There would be, they have an assessment. And now they're saying maybe this week, end of this month, and with communities being low-risk communities are being spoken to at the end of the month. Do you think this could drag out to become another Christchurch where people are in limbo?
I hope it's not going to drag out, and I think what we're facing here is very different from Christchurch in terms of the scale, in terms of geography. You know, in Christchurch there were 170,000 houses impacted. You know, here we have a couple of thousand houses impacted, but we've got thousands and thousands of acres of land impacted. So it is quite different, and when you do have land and orchards and horticulture and agricultural land, if we need to, get going and move that land and look towards the next seasons for production and getting our economy moving and back on track, we need answers and we need direction for that. And at the moment, a lot of these people are sitting in limbo. And that's really, really tough. And I think that they need some direction, and not only for the fact whether they're going to, be able to get the funding, but are they going to be able to rebuild? These are big questions that are being asked at the moment, and it is causing a lot of frustration and emotion. And I suppose the faster that those decisions can come, the better. But it's just also too, communication is really important. And I just feel that we haven't had the leadership here. We haven't. In terms of our government, and we haven't had any direction or communication, and communication is key. Just let the people know, is a decision coming or isn't it? When's it coming? What's to expect? I just think that those communication channels were really, really let down from the outset, from when the cyclone happened, and that needs to be reviewed and really looked into.
So now you're a former TV journalist, and you also had some would say successful career in communications and that. What made you decide to become a politician?
Well, I've always been...
Short answer.
Short answer, yeah, no. I've always been interested in politics, and I've always wanted to serve my community. Growing up on a farm, I was always passionate from a young age. I went on to become a youth MP for the New Zealand Youth Parliament. So
and you've got a family history of...
And I've got a family history. Yeah. My grandfather, he was a National Party MP for Wanganui, and my grandmother also ran for selection. So it's in the blood. And then I went on to university and I studied politics, and then I studied law as well. And so I went over to the Law Negotiation Championships in Australasia and debated politics. So I've always really been interested. And then when I came out, I went into broadcasting, working as a TV reporter down in Wellington, where I covered a lot of the political stories of the day. And then I went over to the BBC in London, and there I covered some of the big international stories. And so when I came back to Hawke's Bay, I moved more into small business, and I moved into PR and marketing, and then into the horticulture sector. And in the horticulture sector, I've been promoting our food produce here, produced in Hawke's Bay, on the global stage in China, Vietnam, and really trying to grow those Asia markets. And I suppose politics for me is about promoting us as a country and promoting New Zealand and all that we have to offer. And I feel for me now, as a mother of 4 children, living and breathing all of the issues that we're facing at the moment, and with my commercial experience, that it's time. It's time to enter politics and become the local MP for Tukituki. I'm really passionate about the people and people's needs and helping people. And, the next couple of months, I just want to get out and meet as many people as I can across the Tukituki electorate, and then be their local MP and represent them in Parliament.
Now, one of your colleagues in your days of PR and marketing is actually now the MP for Tukituki, Anna Hawke of Labour. Is that a bit weird to suddenly be, having worked together for so many years, to suddenly be opposing each other? And do you two get on?
I think New Zealand and Hawke's Bay's a small place, and you cross paths with many people in your careers, and it's no different from me crossing paths with many people in my media career as a TV reporter, and it's the same here in marketing in Hawke's Bay. You do cross over quite a lot, so it's only natural that you would have worked with different people over time. But what I'd say is that we have very different political values and visions, and I'll just be focusing very importantly on the people of Tukituki and the issues that matter to them.
Now, it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, being an MP can be quite brutal on families because you're away for quite a long time, and that you mentioned you've got 4 children, a young family, I presume, and how will you cope with those pressures?
Well, I was already working in a full-time role, which involves a lot of international travel and domestic travel, heading the marketing of one of our largest exporters and growers here. So we're a modern family, you know, it's very natural that both mother and father work these days, and, you know, the children just get on with it, and we're just really busy, and, you know, we all thrive off the challenge of lots happening in our lives, and it will be no different entering politics, you know. But what I do think about being a mother of 4 children is that it makes you really relevant and current, because, you know, I really understand firsthand what's happening in the education system at the moment, both from a primary, intermediate and high school level. I understand what's going on in our communities because you're involved across all the different sports groups, all the different organisations, because you're there with your children and your family. So I think it makes you more relevant, and I believe that as a mother of 4 children living in Hawke's Bay, that in Tukituki, that I am the right person to be representing this region. And with my commercial experience, having worked in media and marketing and for one of our largest growers in our region, that I'm the right person to be representing Tukituki right now.
So what if the voters disagree with you and you're not elected? What will you do?
Haven't thought about it. I'm here to win the Tukituki seat for national, and we're going to be going hard, 2 ticks blue. I've already kicked off in terms of my campaign. I've door knocked over 2,500 doors now in our electorate over the past 10 weeks. And I'm hearing so many frustrations, and, you know, people are just so unhappy with the current environment and the direction that our country's heading in, and they want change. And so we're going to provide that change.
Now, obviously it takes a lot to run a campaign. Where's your money coming from, and who's backing you?
I think that everything will be disclosed that we need to disclose to the Electoral Commission. We've got amazing support in Tukituki. There's definitely a mood for change. I've got over 15 volunteers in my campaign team. I've got another 20 volunteers that we've just signed up over the next over the last couple of weeks. And so there's some really, really motivated people that are part of my wider team to turn Tukituki blue, and it's really, really motivating. I see myself as the mouthpiece and the voice in the front for a much larger team that is really, really motivated about changing this government.
Wherever you drive in Hastings these days, we see your face on a billboard, and some people are saying, wow, that's quite early. Is it within the time frame that's allowed with the council and that? Are those billboards legal?
Yeah, so my understanding is that they comply with the 12-week rule that you are able to have sign up to promote or advertise a community meeting, which is what we have as community meetings that we're advertising, because we feel that it's also really, really important that people know that there's a National Party candidate, and that people have the ability to come and ask questions and hear from you, and for us to be able to discuss our policies. So, you know, there's certainly a lot of engagement for that, and people would like that to happen. So we're providing them with that opportunity.
But your signs are clearly political, because they say Catherine Wedd for Tukituki. You know, and political signs are only 2 months before So how does that work?
So there's different signs.
Yeah.
So there's that during the electoral period, which is the regulated period from July to October, and then there's other signs that you're able to put up which can promote community meetings. And I was just in discussion with the council yesterday around the signage, and they were saying that that's absolutely fine to be promoting a community meeting. And as I said,
even if it's a political meeting?
Even if it's a political meeting, that it's okay if it's promoting a meeting, a community meeting that obviously people within the community are interested to come and hear about. And so that's what the street meetings are all about. They're about being able to provide a platform for people to be able to come and listen, discuss, ask questions, because at the end of the day, we've got an election in October and a lot of people want to change the direction of this company. So this country. And so they're really, really interested in hearing from us.
Which sounds very political, but I'll give you that the council has agreed to it. And while technically it might be legal and all above board, is it within the spirit of the elections to have so far out to have what are essentially campaign billboards up?
Oh, I absolutely think so. We're in an election year and we've got candidates all around the country that are starting to, get out there in our communities, at events, doing community meetings, doing street meetings, doing public meetings, advertising in the papers, getting signage up, putting flyers in letter drop boxes, door knocking at the doors, and it's really important that we're understanding what the issues are, and the best way to do that is to make sure that we're connecting with as many people in our communities and in our electorate as we can. As I said, I've door knocked over 2,500 doors now, and what I'm hearing at the door are huge frustrations and real people with real stories wanting to connect with you, and that's what this is all about. And so yes, we've got an election in October, and I'm going to be working extremely hard to talk to as many people as I can in the next few months leading up to the election.
Just a couple more questions. Christopher Luxon spoke about turning this region blue. So that means it's you and Katie Nimmin. Why do you think you two will be elected?
I think it's really important as a region, Hawke's Bay, that we work together collaboratively, and Katie and I have taken that approach because we believe that we would be stronger together and be a stronger voice in Wellington for Hawke's Bay, the two of us together. And so even the Cyclone showed that, it's all about Hawke's Bay, and, we want to make sure that we're advocating for Hawke's Bay as a team. And there's so many crossovers, there's people that have businesses in Napier, they live in Tukituki, vice versa, they've got businesses in Tukituki, they live in Napier. So we have so many crossovers, not only with people living in their electorates, but with the same issues as well. So I think it's really important that you have two people that get on really well, that work together really well, that have a good skill set. We both complement each other with our skill set. Katie's very into the roading and infrastructure, having come from Nimmin Buses and working at the Regional Council. I've got a really strong rural background and marketing, export, agriculture and trade background and business experience. So together, we believe that we're an invincible team for Hawke's Bay.
So now, one sentence, why should people vote for you?
I think that I am connected to our community, I understand the issues, I have a family of 4 children, I know what's going on in our education system, I want to create safer communities, I want to make sure that I'm part of a team that's going to be investing in Hawke's Bay infrastructure and providing better outcomes for our region. And I believe that now, a mother of 4 children, 43 years old, that I have the energy and motivation to get things done for Tukituki.
Catherine Wedd, thank you for your time and all the best for the election.
Thank you.